Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the Above the Bar podcast. It's your host, Sean. We have bellied up to the bar. I think, is this the last? I think it's the last Wednesday in March, but I have to go look at. I'm pretty sure it is. Yep, because Tuesday next week is April 1st. So we've bellied up here to the bar last week in March, and joining us this week, we're going to be talking about we're not going to talk about punching cows, but at some point I will make lots of Navy jokes, things along those lines. We will talk about one of my favorite drinking states because that's where our guest today is. So joining us all the way from a city I've actually been in, and he's right up in that area. So that's always a unique one when you're in the land that God forgot up those ways. It's Mr. Sam Cooke, all the way in Madison, Wisconsin.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, brother. And Sam's going to be talking with us. We're going to be talking about what is food insecurity? How can we affect it? And what is this is a great word. I always like it when guests have words that I can't pronounce, like philanthropy farming.
It's a mouthful. The funny thing is I came up with it, and I think I trip over it just about every time I say it.
Did you invent the term philanthropy farming?
I mean, I can't say I came up with it. I'd never seen it anywhere before, and it just sounded fun. So I used it. I ran with it.
Copyright that. Great market. Pat Riley's got three-peat copyrighted, right?
He does. There was somebody else, some other athlete that I saw that was trying to get something copyrighted. I think it was The Rock was trying to get a bunch of stuff copyrighted, like the Great One and all kinds of stuff like that. And and Wayne Gretzky was the Great One, so there was a big controversy about that. But
what's his name? Let's Get Ready to Rumble guy. So
Michael Buffer,
he has that copyrighted, and if you make the grand mistake of trying to use that line, he's got people that do nothing but scour the internet looking for people doing it and firing out cease and desist letters and coming for your ass if you make the grand mistake.
I guess. Hey, wait, so since you just said it, is that
I just said the words. I didn't do the Michael Buffer thing.
Okay.
Like
I was waiting for it.
Like I don't think he can come after you if you just say the words. But I know if you try to like mimic his thing, he'll come after you. Oh yeah, he is like game on. Now you're mine. So
let's give that a hobby.
And he's probably still making bank off of it. I don't even know if he does.
Doing okay.
His brother does.
His brother does the same thing?
Yeah, his brother's got his own thing, but he has a brother who's an announcer, and they didn't know they were related. They didn't know they were brothers until somebody was like, "Hey, this other announcer looks a lot like you," and come to find out they got the same dad. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, and I think they're both buffers too, but I'd have to look it up. Yeah, there's a whole thing about that. Wow. But let's go ahead and get some house cleaning done here real quick.
Yeah.
Folks, as always, we got the big board over my right shoulder for sticker and a cause. If you got something you're supporting, maybe you have a philanthropy farm that you're trying to support, or a podcast or a band or anything whatsoever, you reach out to us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere you can think of. Our website is theabovethebarpodcast.com. Our emails, theabovethebarpodcast@gmail.com. Reach out. Let us know what you got going on. I'll tell you where to send your sticker to, and we'll read about you live here on the air. We're all about taking care of the community, seeing who's out there and seeing who we can support. Hello, Aunt Eileen. How are you? See, you already got people. She's not far from you. I don't know. She's in the Dakotas, so I don't know how far.
It's a bit of a drive. Yeah, I'd say about a 7-hour drive.
Yeah, everything in the Dakotas is far. Like, I don't care where you're. Like, if you're in the Dakotas, it's still far.
I love the Dakotas, but if you got to drive 30 minutes, it feels like you've been driving all day. So
everything out there,
everything's a long ways away, but
everything out there is. Mm-hmm. So, but Well, that's right. I forgot you're in Montana. It's Uncle Ed that's in. I get them all
Oh, my
confused.
sister lived in Montana. My older sister lived in
She's in
Montana for a
Billings.
while.
She's in Billings.
Yeah,
I
she
forgot.
lived in Helena. She reported at the Capitol, the state capitol there. So,
Oh, look at
but
that.
yeah, so I've been to Montana a few times. Beautiful country too.
See, I knew I wasn't crazy. She grew up in Sturgis. I have an uncle who lives in Sturgis,
See,
like legit in Sturgis.
that's got to be wild.
Afterwards, I'll tell you how I found him on CNN one day, and it was hilarious. And I know my aunt knows this story. And if you didn't know, Aunt Eileen, I contacted Uncle Ed like as soon as that happened and reached out to him. See, I'm already sidetracked here, folks. So make sure you send us that sticker. And we got to talk about our sponsors, the people who pay the bills around here, and that's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson Cooksaki, and Schoharie, North America's largest custom window treatment company. Budget Blinds. They're focused on everything from blind, shade, shutters, tint, drapery, you name it. They've got it all. And if you're here in the capital region, around Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson, Cooksaki, and Schoharie, you got a couple days left here, and they're still running their sale. Buy 2 window treatments, get the third one free. So make sure you're jumping on that. Buy 2 window treatments, get that third one free. And as always, if you tell them that you're there to belly up to the bar, they're going to go ahead and offer you another 5% off of your entire order. That's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Budget Blinds of Hudson and Cooksaki, and Budget Blinds of Schoharie. All right, brother. So all the house cleaning is done. So
awesome.
Now let me ask this question. So you were in the Navy.
Yes.
Did you enlist out of the Wisconsin area?
I did. I enlisted out of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, is where I'm from. I used the Minneapolis MEPS to get into the Navy, and then ended up in Great Lakes, for boot camp.
Okay.
And from there, headed down to Pensacola, Florida for some training.
Pensacola.
Beautiful. Oh,
the mega building.
Yeah, exactly. That place is huge. That whole air base in that training center is absolutely insane. And it's gotten bigger. I was down there, went down to see an old military buddy probably like 5, 6 years ago, maybe 7. I don't know, math's hard when you get old.
Oh, yeah.
And we went back to the base and we went to the aviation museum there, and it's just massive. It's impressive how much it's grown. But again,
about that
beautiful place down there. Yeah.
Can I tell you something about that museum?
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, I don't know if it's still there or not, but when I went through Pensacola, when I re-enlisted in 98, I'm assuming by now it's not like this anymore. They had they were redoing the brochure for the front of the museum.
Okay.
So we were doing our graduation photos, and it was 3 corporals, 3 sergeants, and they asked us 3 corporals, 2 sergeants. They asked us to pose out front in front of, I think it was an F-14 Tomcat or whatever it is.
Yeah. Tomcat.
And they asked us to pose in front of it. So for the longest time, my face and my buddies, you couldn't actually see our faces, but we were on the brochure, and mine was pointing at the little placard in front of the plane and then pointing up like, look, that's it right there. And then the guy asked you if you knew him. The guy asked you if you knew him. Him and another guy, Tommy, were off to the left, and they were like talking like. So I used to be on the cover of that brochure.
That's great. That's great. I didn't know you were so famous.
One of my few claims to fame there.
The funny thing is, you were there in 98. I was there in 99.
Oh, wow. So that would have been the same brochure.
Yeah, same time frame. Yeah. So that's crazy.
That was, I'm going to tell you, the biggest pain in the butt to that entire place was the fact that the Air Force was there too.
Yeah, they sucked. Our class was a mix of, this is my first real, our class in the ordnance school was literally a mix of Marines and sailors. So that was like my first real interaction with
stuff like
Marines.
That.
And it was just funny. Like, we got along great. Like, everybody in our class got along. There was no weird little riff. I mean, there's obviously some ribbing and stuff like that.
Right.
It was, natural stuff. And so then after Pensacola, I got to pick a duty station, and they got me with this one. Uh, they did. They're clever. The Navy is clever.
Gotcha.
They were they did. So they got me with it. They had put up there that I was supposed to go to Naval Air Station Beaufort, South Carolina. And you and I both know it's not a naval air station there. It's a Marine Corps air station.
MCAS.
Yes, sir. And so I get there. I take my flight, get out of the airport in Savannah, and I tell the cab driver, I'm like, hey, I need to go up to the Naval Air Station. And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he's like, "There's no Naval Air Station here." And I'm like, "Yeah, there." And I show him my orders, and he's like, and it said on the orders, Naval Air Station. So he took me to the address, and it says Marine Air Station. I'm like, they looked so confused because I was the first person to arrive from the new Navy air wing that was coming there. There
Oh,
was
wow.
nobody else there.
Like
And
not
so
the
here I
CEO or
was,
nobody?
nobody. And so I walk in, my little dress white uniform and everything, and they're looking at me like you are in the wrong place. I'm like, you need to go to the Naval Hospital that's over here, or you going to be here? And so it was interesting, but that was honestly, I worked there for 3 years in the Marine Aviation Squadron, and those guys were great. The logistics squadron guys were fantastic. Everybody that worked there was incredible, and it was really where I kind of grew up, and then like became, started to kind of chisel away at who you become as a person, right? I had nothing but love for him, and we were talking before the pod. I got this plaque back here that says, I'm gonna read it verbatim. We know it's hard for you to swallow, but you can't always be right. P.S. Don't forget you were raised by Marines. So I hang that everywhere I go. It humbles me. It reminds me where I came from. So
that's a beautiful thing. And I always tell folks, if you can get into a Marine unit, we will accept you as one of ours. We had a I always tell the story. We had a Air Force Master Sergeant, which threw us off in the Marine Corps because Air Force Master Sergeant is an E7, not an E8, which for us that's an E8. But we had him in our gunnies course in Quantico, and he was the crew chief for Air Force One.
Oh wow, that's
super nice guy. Yeah. Like squared away, all these things. Super nice guy, Air Force One, and I always remember like he got a lot of love. Like being an Air Force guy, you would think like we should just abuse him, but he got a lot of love. He wasn't willing to do all the stuff. We were like, come on, you suck.
Nice.
And for those of you that are joining us that are out there, please give this a like, share, follow, all those cliche things that your kids have posted. Share to all your own personal sites. That's how this message grows, how other people find out what's going on. So here you are. You're in the Navy, which you do know what those 4 letters stand for, NAVY. You know,
never again volunteer yourself.
That's it.
Learned that right away.
Still not as funny as my father saying to me. Now, my father never served a day in his life. He had a glass eye. And one day he says to me, son, there's only one word you can spell at a USMC, right? And I'm like, I'm slow. I don't know. And I'm sitting there and he goes, scum. I'm like, yeah. I was like, and it's funny.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because I promise you, 9 out of 10 Marines have never heard that. Here's my old man throwing that one out there. I was like, where the hell did you even hear that? It was somebody at the bar. All right. So,
well, it's always somebody at the bar. So
you're doing this. So you said you did 4 years or 5 years?
5 years. Yep.
03, 04, you're getting out, coming home.
04 got out, came home. My dad came to visit me out in Seattle. I was out in Bremerton, Washington was my last duty stop. And he came out to visit me, great little visit. And we talked about like the family farm was struggling. And, he's like, I could really use your help. And we had a dairy farm, and small dairy farms just don't make it anymore. But so he asked, he's like, would you come home and try, and basically when your dad comes to visit you and asks you to come home and save the family farm, you've got 2 choices to make, And so I went home and I got out, and I liked the Navy, like it was fun. I had a good time doing it. I got to travel the world. By the time I got out when I was 25, something like that. 25, I think I got out. And by the time I had gotten out, I had been to like 12 or 13 different countries.
Oh, wow.
I'd been around, like we did a Westpac, Australia, Japan, Guam, Thailand, like all these great places. So yeah, you learn a lot about the world real quick when you're young, and it opens your eyes a lot. And again, another step to grow you up while you're in.
Now,
So
I want to kind of go back to that statement right there is, your dad coming to you, and saying, hey, the family farm's struggling. I need you to come home, which sounds like something out of a movie. Like
it does.
It sounds like, so dad came and said, oh, son, we need you to come home to the
So
family
Paul,
farm.
Paul came up to visit
Paul
me.
came up and said, listen, young, and I need you to come home. But,
no.
I mean, as a man, I mean, especially 25 in the service, you're an old fart at that point. People don't quite understand that, at 18, I looked at 25-year-olds in the Marine Corps and was like, he knows everything. He can do it all. He's a sergeant. He's so smart.
He can buy beer.
Dude, he's already got like 5 kids and 3 ex-wives. He's 25. Got to know everything. But I mean,
I remember being told by one of the young guys there when I turned 25, like my last 6 months I was in, and he looks at me and he's like, "You're like a quarter century old, dude."
He punched him in his throat.
God. Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, what was that? I mean, for you, what was that feeling just like to be like to have the person you look up to as your hero? At least most of us do.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot. Like I was not expecting it. I wasn't really like I knew things weren't going good, but I wasn't expecting that conversation. And so to see somebody that you look up to your whole life, to see somebody that's been like an inspiration, that's been like a mentor to you and taught you, all the basics of how to be a man and stuff like that. Like for him to come there and like be vulnerable like that, that's big, like it is. And so and like he asked it in the only way my dad could ask it, like, are you coming home or not? I need your help.
Like very simple.
Yeah. But I mean, I knew for him to do that, it was a big deal. And so I said, yeah, I'll come home. And that's where the whole thing started. I still had a year left before I was technically out, or maybe like 13 or 14 months left or something like that. So we went on the Westpac. I knew I was getting out the whole time we were overseas. So I had like time to plan and prep for it, stuff like that. But that was a big moment,
Right.
And then coming home, it didn't work, like I said, the economics behind small family farms and stuff, it's really difficult to make things work these days, especially in the dairy industry. Like if you're not running, I'd say at least 1,000 or 2,000 head of cattle now as a dairy farm, you're just not going to make ends meet. And
well, that's going to be my question.
We were trying to do it with 40,
Actually, I was going to say, like, what constitutes us? Like, I don't like 40 heads to me, not knowing anything about cattle.
Seems like a lot.
No, actually, I was going to say, like, that doesn't seem like a lot, but I watch TV.
Yeah.
And you watch TV and it's like, well, you see here, we've got these digital milkers and we've got, 7. I did learn.
That's the way everything's gone, and so, it's gone the way of trying to be as big as you can so you can get bulk discounts on everything, so that it's efficiency based to stay in business. And that's kind of what's been like the death of the family farm, the small little, grandma, grandpa had, 100 acres and milk 20, 40 cows or whatever. Like that can't happen anymore. It doesn't exist. And that's sad, like that's how I grew up and it was a great way to grow up. But, just like anything else, things change, industries change. But that's one of the things to kind of pivot to the philanthropy farming. I'll say the word so you don't have to.
Thank you.
Big words hard. Big words hard for Marine.
Big word hard for Marine. Don't work.
But that's where I think that this idea of philanthropy farm can kind of maybe not necessarily resurrect the family farm, but like give it a resurgence, give it another chance.
Well, that was going to be my next question is how far along are you when you realize, because the other thing I think about, well, hey, if I had a small family farm, 40 heads of milkers, maybe I need to, find a kitschy thing that we do. Like, hey,
Mhm.
all of our milk, I can introduce you to Sue, the cow, and we make ice cream. This ice
Yep.
cream pint says Sue's milk.
Yep.
Like, how do you go from
You kind
either?
of yes, you got
Yeah,
to find a niche. If you're that small and you're trying to make it work, there has to be a niche to it. Dairy farming is particularly tough to do on a small basis because like it's morning, night, 24/7, 365 days a year. Cows get milk morning, night, probably noon too. Every it's either every 8 hours or every 12 hours. And
wow,
it's every single day of the year. And there's no days off. It's brutal. So unless it's like a family thing where my parents helped out. If I needed a Saturday off to just go be 25,
right,
they would come do chores and stuff like that. But not everybody's got that, and you can't. I mean, it'd be difficult for me to do what I do as a firefighter, where you work in 24-hour shifts. You couldn't do
right.
this. But I mean, if you wanted to do something small, like a small beef farm, a small, chicken, small garden, anything like that, this could be something really feasible for people to do and still have a full-time job so that you're not worried about losing your house or anything like that. But no, definitely difficult to do in the dairy industry for sure, but not a terrible idea overall. So
So when does your mind shift come up with this idea of, well, you know what? I think,
yeah.
like, how do you shift into that?
So when I tell this, I start rambling. So if you want to tell me to shut up at any point in time, just tell me to shut up. So I got involved with the fire department union right away when I got hired down here in 2010. And by 2012, I think I was running a member of our charitable trust where we do different fundraisers throughout Madison and Dane County. And we basically raised money for other nonprofits that needed help, right?
Okay.
And so we threw a charity ball every year. We did a firefighter calendar, pancake breakfast, stuff like that. To help raise money for local nonprofits in the area that needed help. So I got really good at fundraising and I got to meet people in the nonprofit world. And then I think it was about 2019, COVID hits, right? It doesn't shut anything down until 2020. And that was my last year on this trust. And I mean, we kind of at a loss for what to do because we couldn't throw in fundraising events. You couldn't be in the same room as people.
Right.
You couldn't be social, the social distancing and everything like that. So we were trying to come up with ideas on how to still help local nonprofits because I mean, if you think businesses were struggling, like nonprofits were dying during COVID, um, they were they were failing left and right because the businesses that were their sponsors were now struggling to make ends meet. So donations dried up, government grants dried up, a lot of things dried up during COVID. And so a lot of these nonprofits that weren't necessarily financially stable, and a lot of those are small nonprofits, were starting to fall. So we decided to start making donations. And then I decided one day, I was like, you know what? I watched the news story on the food banks and the food pantries, right? Cars are lined up around the block. People were running out of food and people were laid off. They were furloughed from their jobs. And so everybody's struggling to get by. So I called a buddy of mine that worked at the Goodman Community Center, who they have a food pantry there. And I asked him, hey, we did like put a box in all 14 stations here in Madison. We filled them up and I brought a pickup truck in, full of food. Would you guys take? He goes, yes, we'll take anything, you know?
Wow.
And so I dropped, we did that a couple times and I dropped these pickup truck full of, what's in there, boxes of
Dry goods,
cereal.
cans, right.
Yeah. And so John would sit there and he'd be looking, digging through the boxes. And I asked him, is there something that you're looking for, And he said, yeah, we need meat. Like, we don't have any meat protein. And that's the big thing at the stores. And still, like, it's expensive. And I was like, well, I can't just ask people to bring in meat. Firefighters, we're animals, we'll eat it. So, or we'll leave it in the box, it'll go bad because we didn't check the box that day. And then 3 days later, we're like, what smells in here? Um, so then I went home and I got to thinking about everything. And I thought, like, well, I'm good at fundraising. I kind of understand the nonprofit world. Um, I grew up on a farm. I wanted to get out of suburbia where I was living. Like, is this something that, like, if I pulled this off, is this possible? And so the idea of the little hamster on the wheel started running really fast. And I, I started talking to everybody. I was talking to, I wrote a lot of stuff down, did a lot of brainstorming. So the idea is formulating in 2020. I started talking to a friend of mine who's a nonprofit attorney, a nonprofit accountant, other people in the community who'd run and started successful nonprofits, and uh, pitched the idea to a lot of people and got really good reception. But then all of a sudden they're like, "That's a great idea, but that's
Uh,
insane." But you're insane for wanting to do this. And then talking to my dad, even he was at first was like, "No, you an idiot? Like, nobody's gonna give you money to do
well,
this little hobby farm on your own." And so it took a little bit of convincing, and he tried to, I don't think he tried to talk me out of it. He just was very tread lightly, and I think he was cautious because of how everything happened with the farm, our family farm, and he
now
didn't
is the
want to
family
see me
farm
go down that
stable
same.
now? Is the family
I mean,
farm?
they sold off all the acreage around it a
Oh,
few years ago, and they still have the house and the barn and 15 acres around it and stuff like that. So they still live there. My parents do. But yeah, it's stable. Like, they're financially set because
they're
of the
comfortable
state.
now and all that.
They're comfortable, yeah.
Now, real
But
quick, folks, if you're
mhm,
curious and you're like, Sam's amazing, I want to give him money. He said he's not asking for it. I'll ask for him because I don't give a shit. Check out cccattleco.org. I don't care what he has to say. I mean, he's a Navy guy. We do our best to help him. They're little fellers. We do what we can for little fellers.
we're,
But
we're buddies. We're buddies.
we're
Same
good.
team.
Same team.
We play Army every year in football.
I
We're same
I
team. So
love whooping Army's ass. There's nothing
it's a
better.
great,
You
it's a
need to go
great
back to
game,
the
man.
old uniforms though, that had the
Yeah.
Eagle Globe and anchor on one side and the Navy anchor on the other side.
Yeah.
I didn't like this year's uniform. I like that one better,
Mhm.
where at least you gave the respect where it belonged. But if you're curious and
Yeah.
you want to know what Sam's going on, or maybe you're in an area where this is a possibility that you're thinking like, hey, maybe I could do, maybe not cattle, but something else that you think you have.
Yeah.
Sam can kind of point you in the right direction. Again, it's cccattleco.org. Now, I do have one quick question, and I know everybody's
Yeah.
telling you like, hey, the money. Is there a difference? And I believe there is, but in this whole industry between a beef cow and a milking cow, or can a milk cow be a beef cow? Like if it gets
Hmm.
older, you just like chop, 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 ha. And now I don't know how to get it work.
It's like, I always try to relate it to people as like breeds of dogs, right? Like, there's a lot of different breeds of dogs. They're all used for different things. You've got, little cute little poodles and chihuahuas and stuff that are like pet dogs and stuff, and then you've got, hound dogs and fox dogs and hunting dogs, and so cattle is the same way. Dairy cattle can be used for beef. It's just a different musculature and fat content and stuff like that. And dairy cattle are specifically bred to produce more milk than beef cattle. So beef cattle are specifically bred for getting big, muscular, beef.
Like a meat
And so
chicken.
dairy cattle, yeah. So like, if you ever looked at like a dairy cow standing in the barn, you'd see lean, angular cattle. Like, and then if you go look at a beef cow standing in a lot, it looks almost like a little poof ball, because it's all muscular and stuff like that. So it's just a matter of the two different breeds and two different species of cattle. So that's all.
The first thing that came to mind to me is like, so what we're talking about here is the difference between the guy who's like, I'm a bodybuilder, and the guy who's like,
Exactly.
I'm a power lifter. Like
Exactly.
that's the difference is
Yeah. Well, and you can equate to like people who are in shape, right? The guy who runs a marathon is in shape.
right.
The guy who's in the gym bench pressing and squatting 400 pounds is in shape.
Just
They're both
different
in
shape.
shape. They're just different things, different shapes. Yeah.
And look,
So
folks, if you have questions for Sam, you want to know about this program, or maybe you've seen some other programs, or you're like, hey, how do you even get involved? Drop your questions here. He's
yeah.
more than happy to answer all that.
Well,
So
so the fun
you're
thing is that on that note about getting to learn stuff, and
right.
I decided probably like a month ago that this would make a good book on how to book.
Oh,
So for like 30 days now, I've kind of been plugging away at this,
yeah,
and
we talk about book
so
writing all the time because I've always got great writers, and I've got, and if Nate was
I'm a
around,
terrible writer. It's gonna be a picture book.
Listen,
crayons.
I'm the guy who's like, and everybody's like, dude, your story is absolutely amazing. They love it when I tell the story of my book, and they're like, you should write this. I'm like, I can't. They're like, why? I said, because it's already done. In my head, it's already done. So every time I go to write it, I'm like, I already know what this movie is. Why do I need to write it back down? I've already seen it. I'm horrible that way. So you're mentioning
mine's not about the story. Mine's about, if you want to do this, I can walk you through how I came to do this. I can show you steps along the way
what
of
that
like
process was like.
what this process looks like. And the thing is like, it doesn't have to be a cattle farm. Like, this is probably the most difficult and expensive one to do. And also because we do equine therapy here too. So like the price of everything is just like the two most expensive animals to feed. I decided to have those, So, but like I've talked about, like, if you just have a couple acres and you want to do like a vegetable plot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like 2 acres of vegetables feeds a lot of people, you know, a lot of people. And these food banks and these food pantries and stuff, especially in small communities, we talked about food deserts and stuff like that. They need this stuff. So it's not just, oh, let's get some cows and do this. Like, you could do this in any which way. That if you've got a green thumb, even better, because it's it's a lot cheaper than running cattle and trying to figure this whole thing out. So,
well, that's the other side to this is, and you just mentioned that the food desert piece. I don't think enough people understand where that comes from, what a food desert is, why we need folks like yourself to support programs like this, because reality of it is, folks, if you want to understand what a food desert is, I didn't understand it until an old captain of mine, back to the military for a second, his family is one of the last we looked, they were like number 354 in the 500 richest families in America, and he was a captain in the Marine Corps, and his family owned all of this. And we're talking, and he's like, oh yeah, food desert. And I didn't know what it was until he explained to me, yeah, grocery stores don't go in those areas because it's not profitable. That's the simplest answer.
It's a very simple answer.
Yeah. And I'm like, serious? He's like, yeah. We don't do that.
So there's like a mileage chart, I think, that the USDA uses for it to give the definition of a food desert.
Yes.
And I think, don't quote me, I think it's a mile in an urban or suburban area. If you're a mile or more away from a grocery store, you're in a food desert. And if you're in a rural area, if you're more than 10 miles away, you're in a food desert. I think maybe it's less than, maybe it's like 5 in the rural area. I don't know. But the thing is that you don't have access to healthy foods all the time, to fresh foods and produce and stuff like that. So you're eating processed frozen stuff because it keeps longer in the freezer, right? So if you live 10 miles away from a grocery store, say even 20 miles, and that's your closest drive, right, to get fresh food and vegetables and stuff, like, you're not buying stuff that's going to go bad in a week, because you don't want to drive 20 miles.
Right.
You don't want to drive back there in 3 days to get more fresh eggs and stuff like that. So you're eating a lot of processed foods, you're eating a lot of frozen foods, you're eating a lot of unhealthy foods, and all that stuff, all the preservatives, all the extra additives and stuff that they put in those foods, they're not good for your body. So that's basically, you hit it right on the head. Like, that's the simplest definition of a food desert you can have. You don't have access to these things.
Yep, it's not profitable.
No.
So this program you've got going on here, and again, folks, if you want to know more about it, it's cccattleco.org. You can see what Sam's got going on. So you tell everybody in 2019 or 2020, you're like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and do this. This is the plan. And they're all like, you're batshit crazy. When did it start to, and maybe it's just starting to, really kind of people go, oh, we can do this, or, oh, I see how this is going to work towards it? Because again, you kind of mentioned towards it, it's not the only thing you decided to do. You also went, hey, if I'm going to go into the non-for-profit world, let me go ahead and do equine therapy for veterans.
Hey, go big or go home,
like while I'm at it, I want to go ahead and clip the toenails of only red squirrels that are left-handed. Like, where does this stop at, that you're like, what else can I go and get after? What's up, Orchid? She's another Marine right there. But so like, what was, like, when you hear this, when did it start really kind of moving the right direction?
So like I was able to, the biggest thing was 2020. The idea comes to me. I decide I'm going to ignore everybody and do it anyways. So now I have to find a farm, right? Like, and I don't know if you understand, like at the time, real estate is still expensive. And I wanted to be in between Madison and Milwaukee, um, to service both communities, right? And they're about an hour apart. So if I could
Okay.
be smack dab in the middle, it's a half-hour drive each way would have been great. But to get the farm that I found here, about 30 minutes north of Madison, um, to get this farm there with the buildings that are here and everything, I would have probably paid double or triple what I paid for this place.
Wow.
And so I got this place. The place has a huge barn. It's about 80 feet by 200 feet with an indoor riding arena, like 30 horse stalls. And it was a horse farm, so we had to convert the back side of it so that the cattle could have a spot. So yeah, that's kind of where, so that happened. And when that happened, that's when it started to get real. I wasn't really real yet. So, because I moved in October and I didn't have animals here all winter because we just didn't have anything set up yet. And so when animals got here, when the cattle got here, when horses got here, and then all of a sudden your morning chores are now happening and you've got stuff to do, that's not just kind of like, oh, wake up whenever I feel like, you go out and, now it's happening. And then when it became real, like when it became like, okay, we're really doing this and this is actually functioning, was probably about a little over a year ago when we made our biggest meat donation. We sent enough food to feed about 7,000 people, about 7,000 servings of beef, to Second Harvest Food Bank.
No shit.
Yeah. And so that's a lot of hamburger.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, that's a Saturday.
So that became very real then. And I think when people started seeing that post and seeing like, oh, okay, because we'd done one the year before that fed about 2,000, provided enough for about 2,000 meals. And then we did that one, which was a little over 7,000. And so then when all that stuff hits and like people are like, he's actually like pulling this off. That's when it started to that's when all of a sudden news stories coming out. We're in the paper, the state journal, we're getting a lot of attention that way. And that's kind of when, I don't want to say fundraising is ever easy because it's still, that is the grind of all of this. Like when the difference between this kind of a farm and a regular farm is you raise your calves, your cattle for 2 years, you process them, you sell them, you take that money and you roll it back into where your money's coming from.
Right.
This is like, I fundraise every day. I fill out at least 3 grant applications a month. I'm constantly looking for different ideas on how to promote the place, on how to get the message out about what we're doing. And so that's the grind of everything, is keeping the place going. But that once we posted that we fed like 7,000 meals in one shot, people are like open their eyes real quick. And they're like, okay, this is real. And so we're trying to get bigger. We want to get to the point where we've got 100 acres where we're running about 60 to 80 head of cattle. And if we do, we'll make the math easy because, math hard for me too.
Yep.
If you process, it really is. So if you have, this is rough estimates. If you have 75 head of cattle, right, and you divide them up in 25, they're basically separated into 3 lots. You've got your cows that have calves, your yearlings, and then your calves. Your yearlings eventually are going to get processed the next year. That's going to be what people eat. So 25 of them every year, roughly 2,000 servings per animal. You're talking about, we'd be providing 50,000 servings of beef every year.
Wow.
And that's a big number. That's the number that we want to hit. So that's where we're trying to go. And it's
now here's a curiosity question. Now, as you guys are doing this, and we kind of talked about this a minute ago, you said 60 to 70 heads of cattle. It sounds like you're still a small,
very small
comparison. Have you, I mean, and I don't know how this works, and I'm going to assume that you have, but have you reached out to any of these larger commercial places and you're like, hey, can you donate 2 heads, 3 heads? What, I don't even know what a reasonable number, like, and if so, what has been their responses? And we'll put them bitches.
Well, so the funny thing is like, I haven't gotten to that point yet because There's two reasons. Number one, I'm working with I don't know if you know what Feeding America is.
Yes, yep, I've heard of them.
Yeah, they're like the nonprofit in food insecurity in the country. Like they have the most accurate food insecurity stats. They run the largest food banks all over the country. They're a great organization. And when I was doing my little presentation on what I'm trying to do, that at one of them there just happened to be like the head of the Wisconsin Feeding America chapter in there.
Oh wow.
And afterwards, she came up talking and said, "We got to talk. We need to sit down and have a conversation." And so one of the things that I've talked to her about was I floated an idea past her about trying to get legislation into the Wisconsin tax code for farmers who donate one or two head of cattle every year to food banks so that it becomes a tax write-off for them.
Yeah.
So that now, I mean, what is there in Wisconsin? I can't even think of the number off the top of my head. I talk about this all the time, and I should know this, right? Like, um, I think there's like 5,000 dairy farms in the state of Wisconsin, maybe more. So if you can get half of that, and you can get 2,500 people to donate one animal, now you're
Right.
talking 2,500 times 2,000. 2,000 servings of beef, and that's
Because
monumental.
in
It's
my
mind-blowing.
head, in my head, as you're saying this, I'm thinking, especially if there's a tax write-off to it. But I mean, if it's
Well, and that's the thing is they have to have an
yeah,
incentive for it. Other than,
right,
and I hate to say that doing good to me is incentive enough. Like even if I wasn't doing this and turning this into a nonprofit and stuff, I'd still probably be finding some way to do this. But yeah, they there needs to be an incentive for people to do it, and that's where the tax break came in. And I thought, well, maybe so. I'm trying to hammer that out too. Right now, the whole bill is about 4 pages long, and I don't know if you ever looked at Wisconsin tax law or any tax
no,
law.
I've seen some New York ones, but well, I mean, we
Ugh,
can always
yeah.
message Hagstaff because he he's all about texting.
Oh, I love texting.
Yeah,
He's
idiot,
he's bad at it, but he loves it.
idiot. Listen, I'm
Yeah,
whole conversation in of itself.
that's a whole nother conversation. We
It's
don't
the
have enough. We
only
don't have enough
listen,
bourbon in the room right now to knock that out, do
listen,
we?
I said it when they hired the guy. I was like, I
Yeah.
know the way I voted, but that wasn't how I voted. And that dude's
Hmm.
nothing but a frat boy piece of
Yeah.
oh God.
Yeah.
Look at my hair.
Uh.
Look at my hair,
Yeah.
guys. But back to this for a second. But
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that, like, because you kind of said, like, hey, a milking cow can be a beef
Hmm.
cow.
Oh yeah,
At
they
some point,
can.
they have to age out.
They do age out. Yeah, and
And
that's kind of where the idea is
yeah,
like
like
if we call them cull cows, right? So if you're going to cull them out of the herd
call the
anyways,
herd. Yep.
why not put it towards something that's going to make a difference in the world, right? And if you can get that tax break and you can get that tax incentive, it's just more reason for people to donate more and stuff like that. And that's, you know,
I mean,
to
even if
me, that's where, because I tell people I can't do this. I can't fix all this by myself. Like there's not
what's
enough
it,
of me to
what's
go around.
well, here's a simple. I do simple math, and you don't even need a tax law because it's already existed in my head. How much is a beef and or milking cow valued at? Like just
Oof.
a rough number.
Oh boy. I mean, right now I'd probably say for processing, I'd
But just
say,
for what
I mean,
they're
we'll just say $3,000,
so
because
it's
that's
worth
a
three
higher
thousand
end.
dollars.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no matter what, if I had a $3,000 animal that I
Hmm.
gave to you for that
Yep.
purpose,
Tax
I
write off.
just created a $3,000 write-off
Hmm.
because technically I have given a item worth $3,000 to
Hmm.
someone that was a non-for-profit for a purpose. So you don't even need a tax law. What you need is
No.
just somebody to go around to these guys and say, "Hey, look, as you go to call your herd, if you before you just put a
Hmm.
22 behind its head and turn it into a hog feed,
Hmm.
you can give it to me and I'll give you a slip of paper that says you donated a head of cow
Hmm.
to me, and we're going to give it to this organization." I mean, that just seems to make the most sense.
Waste. It's simpler. And so the idea then kind of morphed into talking with the CEO of Feeding Wisconsin or whatever. She was trying to explain how all of their money, a lot of their money comes from federal grants and federal funding and stuff like that. And so she said that Wisconsin is one of the last few states that doesn't have like a state funding for food banks.
Really?
So like Maryland, she used as an example. Maryland, I think that their state food banks get like $54 million a year from the state's budget
That's
to operate. So, and that's a good chunk of change, right? And so then we started kicking around tax ideas at this conference, and there's a little bit of a controversy right now between landowners that own non-agriculturally zoned land and farmers that have ag zoned land here, where farm tax on the land is very, very, very cheap, so that they can stay in business and function because there's a thin profit line, right? And
okay.
people who own these others are paying the regular real estate property tax and stuff like that. So my suggestion was, well, if you bump that property tax up like a 0.5%, it ends up being like 14 or $15 million. There's your money, you know, done.
Sam,
So we
don't
started doing
don't
that.
put a tax more. Don't. Nobody wants. You
I
you
know,
you
but think of all the
you.
people we could feed.
But
So
listen, you will have the wrong people standing on your front door. I've watched Yellowstone. I know what it's like.
I
You're gonna
know,
have, you're
yeah.
gonna have folks standing on your front doorstep that you're
Mhm.
gonna be like, "Hey, honey, why's everybody out here right now?" Yeah, don't do that, Sam.
I know.
Don't.
It's an idea. Like I said, we
It was an
floated a
idea.
lot
But
of ideas
who doesn't
around.
like it though? Folks? Don't go to Sam's house.
Yeah.
Real quick, folks. We got to talk. We're getting close to closing up the
Oh
show.
yeah, we've
The
been
show
chatting too
here.
long. Yeah.
I mean, we've been moving along. We got to talk about our New Scotland last call here. If you're looking for spirits that are as bold and as rich as New York history, New Scotland Spirits is crafting exceptional locally sourced whiskey that tells the story with every sip. From grain to glass, we honor tradition with pushing the boundaries of flavor. Whether you're a whiskey connoisseur or just getting started, there's a bottle waiting for you. Raise your glass to true craftsmanship. Find New Scotland Spirits near you or visit newscotlandspirits.com to learn more. New Scotland Spirits, where history and flavor meet.
That's
Um,
right.
and you know what? I talk slow to Jesse. He's the owner of the company. He was an O. He was an 82nd Airborne O.
You got to slow it down.
Slow it down for him.
Slow it down.
Little
Pictures,
words,
fans, all of it. Yeah.
little
Yeah.
words for those guys. So kind of keep it moving forward here. So it sounds
Mhm.
like you talked to a lot of people. You presented the idea to a
Yeah.
lot of folks, but I'm just curious also because we talked a little bit about this. You've also, we pitched this out there. You're now doing equine therapy.
Yeah.
Like when you already were like, hey, I want to create something that nobody else has created.
Mhm.
While I'm at it, let's get horses.
Yeah.
Like,
So like I kind of fell in love with riding horses during COVID too. You're bored, you're locked up. And this retired firefighter that I used to ride the ambulance with on the fire department, she had horses. She had like 30 horses. She breaks horses, breeds horses. She's been around them her whole life. And so I called her up and said, hey, let people come ride your horses and teach people. She's like, no. And I said, oh, okay, never mind then. And so she's like, well,
how
who are you?
dare
She,
you?
she thought I wanted to bring like a kid or somebody out there, And I said, oh, it's just me. And she goes, oh, you come out. She's like, I'll yell at you all day. And so I ended up going out there, fell in love with it, and went out there for pretty much like the entire pandemic, once a week, every 2 weeks, whatever. And so then in my mind, I'm like, how do I get this new fascination of mine incorporated with this cattle farm? And so the idea then was to incorporate this for vets and first responders. Right now, we have more than just veterans and first responders coming out here. We partnered up with New Beginnings in Madison.
What's that?
It's a therapy group in Madison. It's who our equine therapy works with. Our equine therapist works for Katie McGinnis. She's fantastic. And they come out here every Friday in the summer when it's warm. Nobody, oddly enough, nobody wanted to come ride horses in January in Wisconsin.
I
So it's
couldn't
a shock.
imagine. You
I
didn't
know,
throw like
right?
a little cheese hat on them and like, hey, you can go ride horses with a cheese hat
Yeah.
on.
So, and this took a little while to get going. But last year I think we had 30 people out over the summer. And the idea is to grow this into becoming a thing. So like, and you're a vet, and you understand this probably when I explain this to people, not everybody gets it, but like as somebody who likes to do things, and we got into the service world because we wanted to do something, right? Like we wanted to be a part of it. There's a lot of places that do equine therapy where you go out there and you pet a horse, and that's you pet a horse and, you walk it around in a circle and stuff like that. And that's great. That helps a lot of people. That's
Right.
fantastic. But you and I both know
Nah,
that's not going to be what vets want to do. That's not going to be what first responders want to do. They're going to get there. They're going to meet the horse. They'll be like, okay, how fast can I go on this?
yes.
Well, when do I get to ride it? And so the idea,
I get a
again,
sword when I'm riding it, and can I practice jousting against somebody else?
exactly. So like the idea then is to get them on the horse and get them comfortable enough so that they're able to one day hop on and we say, hey, today your therapy is you and Katie are going to ride out and you're going to do a head count. So while you're riding, you're talking, counting cattle, stuff like that. You're participating in the cattle side of things, which is feeding your community, which has now kind of brought you back to this purpose that you wanted to serve, right? So it's kind of a circular thing. At least that's how I look at it. So while you're out there, maybe check fence, whatever, that now is this purpose that's in their head. Like, okay, we're doing this, and not only am I helping myself, I'm helping feed people that need help. So, yeah. So that's the whole circle of things. That's what we're trying to build out here, and I mean, I want to say we're 5 years away from that, but we're probably closer to like 7 to 10. But that'll be just because to get the land right now. Oof, I don't know if you priced out land anywhere, but
well, can you? I mean, because you're out there in a rural area, can you do those USDA rural things? Like that's got to be a big thing for you.
There's a couple of them that I'm trying to look at, and one of them, the one that was probably the easiest one, that would be the guarantee, would cut the cost of it in half, and it's called an agricultural land conservancy. And what that means is when you buy the land, you put it in this conservancy that says this is going to be agricultural farmland or used for farm purposes for its perpetuity, for its existence. And so if you can do that and you can give them like a 20, 30-year guarantee on that, they will literally either write you a check for half of what you paid for it or pay the person who owns it half up front. And then you have to cover the other half to get that land. So there's a way forward with it. It's just a matter of getting the funding and getting my neighbor to agree to sell me the land. You ever try to talk a farmer out of his land?
Yeah, I can only imagine what that's like.
But I think they like me. I keep bringing them key lime pie and banana cream pie and stuff like that. So like, I'm sweetening them up.
I mean, we could tie him to a gun tube and run it max L and see what he thinks then. I'm just saying, this is how we solve problems.
We've got options, right?
This is how we solve problems in the Marine Corps.
The PTSD rates of vets and first responders are obviously higher than other people, right?
Right.
And I think the vets are running at around 20 to 30. So that's the thing about these studies, right? You can read one says 20%, one says 30%, blah, blah, blah. You can argue all day, but it's a high number of people, right? And then the first responders and the firefighters, I know the stat off the top of my head. They say it's between 17 and 32% of us have had some form of post-traumatic stress disorder, right? So that's a lot of people that need help. And then to bring another study in, and I won't bore you with too many more statistics.
I like statistics. But go ahead.
All right.
Because you know what I think a lot of times is people are like, yeah, I mean, I get
it. Doesn't work.
It's not real. Like how many times, like how numb are people to 22 a day? If I say 22 a day to you, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, 100%.
But how many people are numb to 22 a day, don't understand it, or they're like, yeah, but I mean, is that real? How's that in comparison? And then I have to explain to them that you have to understand that we make up less than 1% of 1% of the population in the entire US. And then you start adding 22 a day into that. I actually had not to be Debbie Downer, but we had a gentleman on here who had an organization, 22 a day. It was called 22 a day, Military Lives Matter. An organization. He took his own life. And this was the guy who ran an organization putting that together, and he took his own life because he was, recovering from what a lot of guys do is they They find the bottom of a bottle. That's not what I'm doing, folks. But they find the bottom of a bottle, and that's how they cope with it. I mean, Sam, I'm hearing everything that you're talking about, and every bit of it, especially for any veterans that are out there, anyone who's ever experienced food insecurity. I will always say, I know we struggled financially when I was a kid, and I know my mother did things like dinner. Do you ever have dinner? Breakfast for dinner.
Breakfast for dinner.
And she would make it into this thing, and it was no big deal, and it was great. We were having fun. As I got older, I understood better what mom was doing and why. And I'll tell you, I never missed a meal a day in my life.
No.
But mom,
I know there were sacrifices made so that I didn't miss the meal.
1,000%. I know the sacrifices made. And I know the things they were saying. So look, folks, take a moment. cccattleco.org. Take a minute. See what Sam's got going on. Check out his website. Listen, if you can take a moment and say, you know what, I can donate this to that. I can help out, because maybe you can't afford to donate, but using the 6 degrees of separation, maybe you know somebody who knows somebody in Wisconsin, in another state, that they could do a program similar to what Sam's doing, and you can support something like this. I promise you, especially if you have children, somebody in your kid's class is not having dinner tonight. They're having.
You don't like, it's the numbers on that are insane. And I know the Wisconsin ones off the top of my head is 600,000 adults and 205,000 kids every year have food insecurity issues here. And to me, for a state that's so agriculturally based, like, it's mind boggling to me that that's a thing. So everybody always tells me, and this is what I started telling people back, is they're like, well, that's, I don't know anybody. I said, I guarantee you know somebody. They're just not telling you. You know?
Who's going to walk around and be like,
no,
yeah, dude, I haven't had dinner in about 3 days.
You know, skipping meals because I can't afford it. Yeah.
You know, all those oyster crackers that used to be in the break room. Yeah, I took all those because that's what I have to eat at night. No one's going to tell you that. No one's going to, no one's going to say to you, yeah, man, I've had to sleep in the car for the last 2 months trying to save money. But, I shower at the YMCA because
I cut my water bill down. Yeah. Whatever it is. Yeah. There's people struggle, and admitting that you're struggling is hard to do for anybody, And so, like I tell them, you say you don't know anybody, but I promise you somebody that
told you.
No, no one's told you that somebody that is struggling, and whether you're helping them or not, it's the little things like, and my whole purpose of talking about this is I hope somebody sees this. If you want to start one, hit me up, shoot me an email, give me, we'll talk, we'll figure something out. But there's little things too, like you can every time you go to the grocery store, go down the canned foods aisle and throw whatever's on sale, 5 cans of it in there, put it in a box in the corner of your house, and when the box gets full, take it to the food pantry. Little things like that. If everybody does these little things add up, and that box might feed 20, 30 people for a week. You never really know how far it's going to go. So it's the little things. And if we all jump in this together and realize that we're not, I'll get a little hippie-ish on here. We're not alone in this, right? We're not alone as a society, as a people. We're supposed to be taking care of each other. Like, if we all do that, things get a lot better for everybody. So,
and I'll take it one step further from what Sam said. If you don't want to go to the grocery store, I promise you have canned goods that are still good that you bought during the pandemic because you thought the whole world was coming to an end, and you were like, I better go to Costco and buy 4 cases of green beans because that's going to sustain us, a bean a piece. I've watched Tom and Jerry. I know how this works. Take the shit out of your house. Take it down to a church in your neighborhood. I'm a Methodist. I promise you, your Methodist church is working with some food pantry. We all do. Take it down there to them. Drop it off. If you're worried that well, I don't want them to tell me that I need God in my life, because you do. But if you don't want to, drop it off in the front door. I promise you the pastor will go, looks good to me. Taking it in. and they
Yeah.
will take care
So
of those things.
the funny thing is, the other day I just watched something on food waste in this country, and it's mind-boggling again, the numbers. There was $160 billion worth of food that got thrown away last year.
Well, I just watched the thing the other day. Now, this was wild to me.
Mhm.
I don't know how true this is. And they said, you go to the grocery store and you can buy a whole chicken for $8.
Mhm.
You really think that grocery store throws that chicken away when it gets old? No, it becomes your rotisserie chicken. They take it over and it's your rotisserie chicken. Now it's $16 for you to buy the rotisserie chicken that almost went bad. But do you
Mhm.
think at night they're going to throw that rotisserie chicken away? No, they're going to take that rotisserie chicken, they're going to cut it up, and now it just became the curry chicken that you're going to pay, you know,
Whatever. Yeah.
pound,
Yep.
and they've got 8 pounds of it. They're not throwing that food away, folks. Take your
Mhm.
time. Look, real quick here. Please make sure you're checking out cccattleco.org. See what he's got going on. Again, if you're finding me through Sam through me, make sure you're giving him a like, share, and follow. He's got his page on Instagram. You
Oh,
can
we started a Tic Tac too, so
oh,
we're
you
on
got the
Tic
tic
Tac
tac.
now.
You got the tic
Yeah.
tac over there, hun.
Oh yeah.
The tic tac over there. Make
That
sure you
drives
check
people
out.
nuts.
You see what he's got going on. If you're just joining us and you want to see more of these, next Wednesday we have Aaron Rockstad. He's the founder and ex-CEO of Rockstad Power, a company built from a bootstrap startup in 2008 into a $500 million privately held powerhouse in P&E sector with over 1,000 employees. Earlier this year, a family-led business was stolen from him and his family in a hostile takeover after sharing confidential financial information under the protection of an NDA. His company potential M&A partner leveraged the details to purchase Rockstad's debt and forcibly seize the company of his business. Wow. Listen, folks, 80s aren't gone. That was some 80s level shit. So we're going to talk about that. His story of, tale of resilience. How do you get back on your feet? Ethics in business, how these things work. And so make sure you're joining us every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Like, share, follow everything Sam's got going on, folks. There's nothing
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I can say more about that. Don't log off on me right after this, Sam. We got to talk for a couple minutes afterwards.
Well, thanks for having me. First, I just want to say thank you. This was a lot of fun, and thanks for letting me tell my story and tell everybody what we're doing out here. And I said, I hope if at anything, I hope it inspires somebody to start one somewhere. So
that's what I'm all about. Now, Sam, I know you binged what are we up to? Somebody has to look it up. It's like 267 or 270 episodes, 270 episodes. I don't know what it is anymore. Because by the end of this, I've had several bourbons, so I don't know. I get lost. But
math is hard. I get it. Yeah.
Mathing everything is hard. Here, we'll figure it out real quick. But at the end of every at the end of every episode, the guest always gets the final word. So what's the final word tonight, brother?
Just one word?
Whatever you need it to be. And this is 279.
Nice. All right. 279. I'm going to tell you something that my dad told me a long time ago as the final word. It's actually hanging up in my bedroom right now. And that whole saying is work hard and be nice to people. If you do that, you'll live a good life. So,
alrighty, folks, be sure to push your stool in. This has been a Second Front podcast presentation found on Apple, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be found.